In 2021, the District Municipality of Muskoka received provincial funding through the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks to conduct 12 technical projects coined Making Waves. The projects aim to examine existing conditions in the Muskoka River watershed, explore ways to reduce the impacts of flooding, and enhance watershed health. These projects will lay the foundation for an integrated watershed management approach for the Muskoka River watershed that seeks to manage human activities and natural resources together on a watershed basis, taking into consideration the connected interests and needs of the environment, economy, and society. The district has led the projects with assistance from an established community roundtable, which includes representatives from the Muskoka Watershed Council, area municipalities, local businesses, and various community organizations across the watershed. The reports and accompanying video presentations for the 12 projects have been prepared by consultants who specialize in the subject matter.
This slide contains the title Watershed Health Indicators, Muskoka River Watershed Project Summary, and the company logo for Hutchinson Environmental Sciences Limited. Hello, my name is Andrea Smith. I'm a senior scientist at Hutchinson Environmental Sciences, an environmental consulting company based in Bracebridge, Ontario. Our company completed the Watershed Health Indicators project for the District Municipality of Muskoka. Hutchinson's 12 scientists specialize in aquatic sciences and watershed management, providing services to all levels of government, as well as industry, Indigenous associations, and non-governmental organizations across Canada. Our team has worked on many environmental projects in the Muskoka region, and we are very familiar with the Muskoka River watershed, including its key natural features and functions and the major stressors threatening its ecological integrity. As part of our work in Muskoka, Hutchinson scientists have provided water quality and environmental review consulting services to the District Municipality of Muskoka for the past 20 years. This slide contains the title Project Purpose, as well as bullet points and a map of the Muskoka River watershed. The aim of the Watershed Health Indicators project is to identify environmental and ecological metrics to monitor the health of the Muskoka River watershed. The selected watershed health indicators should build on existing information and studies available for the watershed, reflect key concerns for the watershed, and be informed by approaches used to monitor watershed health in other jurisdictions. This slide contains images of wildlife and landscapes in Muskoka. Watershed health refers to the ability of a watershed to support natural features, processes, and conditions within its boundaries. Monitoring watershed health is important because it assesses the current state of the system in relation to background or baseline conditions, identifying changes over time and space that may be due to human influence, such as development and climate change. This slide contains the title Measuring Watershed Health, as well as bullet points and an image of a boy fishing. Indicators are often used to measure environmental conditions because they are simplified representations of more complex ecological states and processes that are difficult to quantify. Indicators can include physical, chemical, biological, and socioeconomic attributes of the watershed that convey information on underlying ecological functions. Indicators can be used to document baseline environmental conditions and track changes over time. For example, to determine if conditions are improving, worsening, or staying the same. Target values or management objectives can be identified for indicators, and progress towards achieving these targets through stewardship and management actions can be evaluated. Threshold levels of indicators can also be determined that serve as early warnings of unwanted change that might warrant management action. Indicators are typically selected to represent a range of watershed features, such as water quality and biological communities, as well as watershed functions, such as base flow and nutrient cycling. and also to track human influence, such as land use changes, introduction and spread of invasive species, and the extent of impervious surfaces. To be effective, indicators should be measurable, comparable, consistent, and relevant to the watershed and issues of interest. This slide contains the title Project Methods, followed by a bulleted list and an image of Algonquin Park. There were three main components to the project. First, we conducted a review of existing information and research on watershed health for the Muskoka River watershed to document current conditions and knowledge. Our review included the Muskoka River Watershed Inventory Project, Muskoka Watershed Report Cards, Muskoka Watershed Council position papers, and recent scientific research on the watershed. We also reviewed approaches in other jurisdictions to evaluate methods used to measure watershed health elsewhere, which might be applicable to the Muskoka River watershed. Our review included 4 conservation authorities in Ontario, the City of Greater Sudbury, Ottawa River Keepers, the Alberta government, and the United States Environmental Protection Agency. And finally, we consulted with the Community Roundtable, local community members, and local scientific experts to identify environmental, social, and economic goals and concerns for the watershed. Once these components were completed, we prepared a comprehensive summary report of the project research, consultation, and findings, which incorporated feedback from the district and the Community Roundtable. This slide contains the title Threats to Watershed Health, followed by a graphical representation of threats to watershed health and how they interact with chemical, biological, and physical components of the environment, as well as freshwater services. The Muskoka River watershed is recognized as a jewel to be protected because of its many lakes, forests, wetlands, and rock barrens, which are relatively intact and in good condition, compared with watersheds to the south, which are mainly dominated by urban and agricultural landscapes. However, Muskoka is threatened by a variety of stressors, many of which interact to create additional and often unforeseen negative impacts. Climate change and development are the main issues influencing natural features and their ecological functions in Muskoka. And these are manifested through the additional and interactive pressures of threats such as algal blooms, road salts, calcium decline, invasive species, biodiversity loss, habitat loss and fragmentation, and land use change. A recurring theme from our consultation was that the watershed needs to be protected to maintain its resiliency in the face of these pressures, and that this will require a paradigm shift from the status quo approach to land use planning in the region. This slide contains the title Selection of Indicators, followed by a bulleted list and an image of a lake at sunset. Monitoring of watershed health should attempt to encompass the main environmental components of the watershed and the main environmental stressors. Our review identified a range of indicator types, including physical, chemical, biological, and socioeconomic attributes of watersheds. Including a broad array of indicators from across these categories will provide a comprehensive picture of watershed health that more accurately captures the dynamics and complexity of the system and the stressors acting on it. Based on our assessment of watershed conditions and priority issues and review of approaches used elsewhere, we generated a long list of 29 watershed indicators for the Muskoka River watershed. We divided these indicators into 2 main categories, representing ecological status and threats to ecological status. Under ecological status, we identified 14 indicators representing water quality, water quantity, biological condition, and landscape condition. And under threats to ecological status, we identified 15 indicators representing threats to water quality, threats to biological condition, threats to landscape condition, climate change, and cumulative effects. This slide contains the title Selection of Indicators, followed by a bulleted list. We selected indicators that are sensitive to human activities including stressors such as calcium decline, acid rain, road salt, nutrient enrichment, and climate change, and indicators that document changes to land use and the extent and magnitude of development over time. We recommended several biological indicators, such as benthic macroinvertebrates and fish species richness, because they provide a long-term integration of ecological conditions, compared with the snapshot in time provided by individual physical and chemical measures. We also recommended several indicators that could be tracked by citizen scientists, such as tree condition and the condition of riparian zones. We recommended that water quality be monitored at key sites along the Muskoka River, from upstream in Algonquin Park to the outflow of Lake Muskoka in Bala, to track cumulative effects in the watershed and to identify key stressors or areas of stress, which could then be used to develop focused causation studies. Many of the parameters we recommended as indicators are already monitored within the watershed, such as surface water quality. But the frequency and spatial distribution of sampling may need to be modified to provide useful data at the watershed level. We also provided guidance on how to monitor the watershed indicators. This slide contains the title Recommendation, as well as bullet points and an image of a Muskoka lake. We concluded our report with 21 recommendations for monitoring watershed health in Muskoka, which include narrowing down the long list of indicators to a more manageable short list based on consultation with the community roundtable, local scientific experts, and other stakeholders. Committing to reconciliation with local Indigenous communities in the process of identifying and monitoring watershed health indicators, involving citizen scientists in monitoring watershed health, conducting research on indicators to track emerging watershed issues, including environmental contaminants like pharmaceuticals, nanomaterials, and microplastics, and supporting the scientific research needed to identify, monitor, analyze, and interpret watershed health indicators in Muskoka over the long term. This slide contains the title Integrated Watershed Management, followed by a schematic of the integrated watershed management process. Integrated watershed management is a holistic approach to environmental management and land use planning, which incorporates environmental, social, and economic considerations into decision-making and planning. It is an iterative process which typically proceeds through a series of steps, beginning with characterizing the system and identifying local issues, then setting management objectives and plans and strategies to address those issues, then implementing actions locally and monitoring the system for changes and responses to management actions, and then using that information to further characterize the system and refine or modify the management approach based on monitoring results. Integrated watershed management is being applied to the Muskoka River watershed to reduce flooding impacts and protect overall watershed health. The Watershed Health Indicators Project helps inform integrated watershed management by identifying environmental and ecological metrics for monitoring watershed health. Through its review of existing information and research on watershed health in Muskoka, review of indicators used in other jurisdictions to measure watershed health, and its consultation with the Community Roundtable, members of the community, and local scientific experts, the project lays the groundwork for characterizing the system and identifying key local issues of concern, which can then be used to direct management objectives, plans, and strategies to protect watershed health.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. To find out more about this and other integrated watershed management projects, or to learn more about integrated watershed management in the Muskoka River watershed, visit muskoka.on.ca/IWM projects.